something that I think we all intuitively feel is that we're running out of time. And that statement is intentionally ambiguous because it applies to many different concepts of our life. But let's start with the economy. So there's undeniably an imminent threat right now of AI in the sense that it could restructure the entire base or foundation of the economy to the point where we have universal base income. So if AI is as good as people are saying it can be, and it does get implemented by corporate America to the point where it can automate pretty much any task that's done on a computer, unemployment will reach over 60%. And then about 5 to 7 years later, we're going to have mass produced AI robots that can do the majority of labor intensive jobs. And then unemployment will reach in the north of 90%, right? And so this will force a universal base income, which is basically where everybody is getting money from the government. And the way that this works is that, well, the GDP is still going to thrive because of AI. It just won't need people. And so then money can be given to the masses. And it's not going to be a crazy amount of money. It's just going to be enough to live. Now, I think this all in all could be a good thing because it's going to allow people the free time to pursue something that they're interested in, which hopefully is art and creation of some sort. But the reason that I'm saying we're running out of time is because it feels like you have about maybe 2 years, 3 years to figure out what it is that you want to do and then close the gap and become a prominent figure in your respective space. So if you want to build software, you really got to build up that software sooner versus later because AI will be able to do it just as good, if not better later. You know, if you are trying to get into content creation, eventually AI will get so good that the only people that can survive are people that have a pre-existing name, image, and likeness. And it's going to be very hard for anybody to get anywhere. There will effectively be a two-faction system, the have and the have-nots. And when this happens, you'll realize that the haves are maybe 2%, probably even less of the population. And there will be a lot of people that are just satisfied with like having the bills paid and they can, spend their time doing whatever they want. But what you'll realize is that you won't really be fulfilled. And don't get me wrong, people aren't fulfilled right now with a 9 to 5. I'm not saying that's a better alternative, but there's going to be a barrier to like trying to reach certain points in life because AI will make it so accessible that it's like that scene in The Incredibles where it's like, and with everybody super, no one's super. It's that same idea. And so it's like if you just don't get something figured out in the next like 3 years, bro, I just feel like it's going to be cooked, and I hope that I'm wrong about that. And I'm actually optimistic about AI. I think it will all in all be a benevolent thing because as you guys know that follow me, I hate the 9 to 5. And I think if it can get rid of all of those soul sucking tasks that are on the computer, like crunching numbers, looking at Excel sheets, being fake on LinkedIn, I mean, if we can eliminate that, then all the better for it. But there's pros and cons, and there's a price to pay for everything. And so it's hard to tell. And that's why I think I'm working so hard with content creation and various stuff to just try to be on the better side of the two-faction system. And that's the sad reality. That's the harsh reality. It also seems like we're running out of time in terms of the moral decline of society, where things are just getting so outrageous that you can't speak the truth because it will offend the imbeciles, and that is concerning. Hollywood culture, celebrity culture, social media, what gets glorified are things that are essentially like the lowest hanging fruit. It's just like stuff like sex. Like sexual desire is the lowest of all desires. It's the easiest to manipulate. So, you see various forms of that. You see, people are praising Satan, which I rebuke. They do all this like crazy stuff, and you start to see people partake in behaviors that somehow are getting justified. Let me give you guys a perfect example of what I mean by this. if you guys know Alex Cooper, she's the host of a podcast called Call Her Daddy. She says the most degenerate stuff you've ever heard, and it gets glorified and praised. And then they mix it up. It's kind of like money laundering. They mix it up with like more serious conversations with political figures or like popular public figures talking about stuff like trauma or like growing up in hardships. And so it gives it's basically like you're trying to taint the brand from being this like overall degenerate thing to like, let's talk about like serious issues. But at the end of the day, there is an obvious moral decline. Like, you know, Alex Cooper, she literally says like, I want to like hook up with as many people as possible before I get married to like do this. And it's so like, it's so obvious to anybody that hasn't been brainwashed by the culture that's going on, a culture that basically incentivizes just giving into your cheapest like what's the word I'm looking for, impulses. And I'm not really finding the best way to describe what I mean by this, but when you go on social media, you're constantly fed all this negativity. You're constantly fed ideas that just reinforce any bad habits or behavior. And when you have this go at such a large scale, if you've looked throughout history, whenever there's a large moral decline in a society, the society collapses and the government and the foundations of which it's built off of alike. So you'll start to recognize that people lack backbones, because if you have a backbone, you're going to offend somebody, because if you expose the truth, you're calling out somebody. And that's apparently not okay anymore. It feels like we're running out of time with relationships. Bro, some of these freaking people, they're so like entitled. Like in my experience, like a lot of like the women that I have like met, they're like hyper entitled, and it's only getting worse. And the attitude that these people have is just, I can only speak to how I've felt in relation to women, because obviously I only like girls. But you know, it's just like, it's exhausting, bro. You meet someone, you talk to them, and they feel like everything is low risk, high reward, where it's like, oh, I don't have to get into a relationship, but we can hook up, we can be intimate. And it's because there's a lack of internal validation in our lives. There's a lack of any sense of fulfillment. So we try to distract ourselves with various pleasures that are low cost. You know, they're cheap. And inevitably, this always leads you to be unfulfilled. It's just like, this is just the truth. Anybody that has any life experience. But the reason I keep saying, like, it seems like we're running out of time is because at what point does the culmination of society, the economy, the mindset as a whole of our culture reach a point where it can't sustain anymore and it collapses? Another thing, the birth rates, they're so fast, like they're declining at such a fast rate that, like, you know, I think it's only 2 first world countries in the world have a sustaining birth rate. And so it's like, so they're like, it may not be in our generation, but in future generations, like, we're just going to die off because we've been brainwashed to believe by the media that having kids is a bad thing. The people will use the dumbest excuses for not having kids. They'll be like, oh, this world is such a bad place. That the world historically has been significantly worse. And right now it's a much better place than it was through the majority of history. And people have been saying that for millennia. You know, they've been saying like, oh, it's so, like, don't use the whole like moral high ground card as an excuse for something like that. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. They try to empower women by telling them that there's more merit in, or there's more, it's more desirable to focus on your career than having a family. The most fulfilling and valuable thing both men and women alike can do is have and raise a family. It's not even close. I'm guarantee, like, I'm telling you this, most people will probably agree with me, but I just made a short form video on this where I said, like, there is an overwhelming amount of studies that show that People that are married and have children, the nuclear family, these are the happiest people that live by a significant margin. Like just going to work and doing all that stuff, it's not going to leave you fulfilled. It's about the people in your life, the relationships that you establish, the love that you establish with friends and family. That's what like makes you happy. And so we're getting so far away from this, and that's why it just feels like we're headed for some sort of Armageddon. Wouldn't be it. It's just like just an overall collapse of morals in society. I mean, the Bible, Revelations, talks extensively about this, that we'll see a decline. And it's tragic, and it feels helpless to try to help this issue, but I feel like the role that I'm playing in this is just like talking about it to my audience, you know? But yeah, with AI taking over, we're stepping away from humanization of any form. I even told I was talking to one of my friends about this the other day. Content is at an all-time low. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like TikTok, Instagram Reels, they don't like hit the same. Even a lot of YouTube TV shows, movies, they all have been Mr. Beastified. I feel like that's the best way I can describe it. Mr. Beastified. They are just so easy to consume that it's brainless, and it feels like it lacks any character, and it all fits in one box that's the same somewhat narrative. And it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm so tired of it. And it's like all of these things just point to this idea that it's like we're kind of running out of time here, and we got to figure out a solution sooner versus later. You know, maybe the universal basic income with AI will be a good thing because it will allow us to focus on these things instead of go to some soulless job that we got to rent our soul for, you know? I know this video is all over the place, but those are just my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching.